Care to chat? Hello and welcome again to the Northern Ireland Social Care Council's popular podcast, Care to Chat. I'm Wendy Austin and it's been my pleasure to host these podcasts, now in their fourth series, hearing the stories of social workers, of social care practitioners and those who are their service users, and to hear of the work itself from domiciliary care to probation, early years to end of life, and the constant improvements and adjustments as change is implemented in health and social care here. It's been a real education for me, and I hope an interesting listen and a useful tool for you. Now, I never realised until we started this podcast that social work is a global practice with common values and transferable skills. It's a profession that embraces cultural diversity and sees different practice experience as being a strength for social work practice, including in the Northern Ireland context. This episode's a celebration of that as we dedicate a conversation to internationally qualified social workers, both those who are thinking of coming to work in Northern Ireland, those who are already working here, and those who support them on their journey to supporting our communities. So how can they come and work here? Who are they? What attracts them to Northern Ireland, apart from the weather, obviously? And how were we ever lucky enough to have a proud young Yorta Yorta woman from Yorta Yorta Country in Victoria, Australia, working among us? Now that's a good opportunity for me to do the acknowledgement of country, which I think is such a wonderful idea, and I've never had the chance to do it before, so Kelly, I'm delighted. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands my guests come from, including the Yorta Yorta people, Kellie Young. We pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all First Nations people listening today. So let's kick this off by helping our listeners understand who an internationally qualified social worker is and what you think makes someone want to come and practice social work here. Now, my guests today are Tricia Devlin, Professional Advisor with the Northern Ireland Social Care Council, Rosie Fleming, who's Social Work Recruitment and Retention Coordinator, Workforce Learning and Development Service with Belfast Health and Social Care Trust, Albert Abraham, who's a social worker with Belfast Health and Social Care Trust, and Kellie Young, who's a Probation Officer with the Probation Board for Northern Ireland. Tricia, who is an internationally qualified social worker and why would they want to come here?
Well, I suppose, Wendy, as you've said, it's a global profession. The International Federation of Social Workers, for instance, has developed a definition of social work that's recognised across the world and which we recognise here. Sometimes, though, we appreciate that social work can look quite different in different countries. So what we do is we look at that. So when someone applies to be a social worker in Northern Ireland, and to be a social worker in Northern Ireland, you have to be registered with the Social Care Council because it's a legally protected title. So when someone applies from a different country, we'll look at their qualification and we'll check that it's on a par with the qualification we have here in Northern Ireland, which is the degree in social work. But people come from lots and lots of places across the world. So at the minute we have 6,796 social workers on our register, and 110 of those currently are internationally qualified. So they've been qualified in a different country before coming here. And we've looked at their qualification and said, yes, that's great, that comes up to our standards and requirements. And we have people from all across the world. We have people from India, we have people from Australia, we have people from Poland, Lithuania, from Kenya, from South Africa. So really all parts of the world, which is great to see because they bring such a lot to us in terms of the fact that they have different perspectives, they may have slightly different practices, which we can learn from here in Northern Ireland. So that's some of what they bring to us. For them coming here, we probably have one of the best, and I'm probably biased in saying this, but we have one of the best continuous professional development frameworks for social workers. So it's a really good place to come to further your practice and to be able to develop as a social worker. And also we currently have jobs as well for social workers here in Northern Ireland. So it brings a lot to our communities and our society to have people available as social workers to serve.
So you say that they have to come up to the bar, if you like,
Sure.
as far as qualifications are concerned. What happens if that isn't quite the case?
I suppose there's a number of things there, Wendy. So what we would do is we would look at the curriculum that somebody has followed within their qualification that they're bringing to Northern Ireland to check that that's commensurate with the things that we learn here. So you talked about transferable skills and values. So we look for things like that, and we look for the taught aspects of that. But we also look at people's practice learning experience or their post-qualifying experience in terms of the kind of social work that they've practiced, and is it commensurate with what we do here and how we recognise social work. So we'll do all of that. Sometimes if people, if the academic part of the curriculum is fine, but we find that the practice learning maybe isn't to the standard that we would expect, then we might ask somebody to undertake a compensation measure. And currently that looks like a placement where they would spend time with an employer in Northern Ireland, and they would be essentially having a supported level of practice that's assessed, and that would be assessed by a practice teacher here, so someone who's used to assessing students, for instance. And then if they are happy that the person has come up to what we would expect, then we'd be happy then to add them to our register.
Oh, very good. Now, we have two people who've been through the process, but in one case all of it and another part of it. Albert and Kelly, I mentioned them both at the start. Why you decided, perhaps you could tell us, to practice social work in Northern Ireland and the process that you went through. Maybe I could start with you, Kelly. You didn't have to do compensation measures. So what was the process whenever you decided you wanted to come here?
So I had to make sure that I'd been in touch with the university, got the academic transcript, but all the subjects had to be stamped by the university individually and checked. So that was the hardest part. That's what took the longest. But once you got all the paperwork together, the references from employers, all the requirements, it can feel challenging and overwhelming, but it's a lot quicker if you have all the right paperwork.
So you're working with the Probation Board now, and I'm guessing, maybe incorrectly, that that's the kind of work that you did before you came here.
Yes, I did a lot of Aboriginal remote outback communities. Being Indigenous, I work with my own people. Also mental health, housing, domestic violence and criminal justice. So a lot of different, and a lot of charter towers and a lot of forward driving and camping, and a lot different to here, but very, very familiar though. People are people at the end of the day, aren't they? You know what I mean? Yeah.
And what about, how do you find the work here? I mean, what you've mentioned there, I can see that there are some areas where they would kind of overlap, but equally there are other areas where it's maybe a slightly different ballgame. How have you found working with the Probation Board?
Fantastic. Supporting, understanding, a good team. I brought my friend Steve along today. He's got over 27 years of experience in PBNI. So what I've learnt about Northern Ireland, very small communities, but very loving, very caring. And Steve sort of took me in, showed me the ropes with social work and the culture, the customs, trying to how it works and understanding social work, and which come from the managers and the team as well, just because we've been doing that PIP at the moment. So that was interesting, because I find coming from Australia, our values remain the same as here. So you've got respect, dignity, compassion, social justice. Where that's the same, it's the legislation. It's the laws. It's the different country that I struggle with, yeah? So, but social work is the same. Does that make sense?
It does. I see Albert's nodding as well. I mean, were some of the things that Kelly mentioned there, were they the perhaps hurdles that you felt you had to jump over as well?
Yes, a bit more, actually. I've started in my process bit early, 2022 and all. And NISC was very patient with me in my whole process. And the registration team, after the whole process of analyzing my transcript, my course, and what I did, they came up with a so-called interview or interaction with me, stating that I need to do a compensatory measures, and it was 100 days. And then they asked me if you want to choose any trust you want to work with, and I told them I'm very familiar with one of the person in Belfast Trust, and his name is David, and he told me that if there is something coming up, just let me know. And obviously I told them about that, and then everything is history. And obviously I'm now working in Belfast Trust, and the whole process, to be frank, it was painful in the early part, because I was working in things which I never did. To be frank, I was working as a social worker back in India in educational side with children, and also so I loved working with children. And sometimes, when you are stuck with certain passion, and you're not reaching there, it is frustrating at times, and it took some time for me to recover from that. But at the end, everything is fine now. And I got a job, and at the beginning I was in children's services, and now I've moved on to hospital. And it's that transition, accepting me as a person, my choices, my decisions, by the place I work. That's very important for anyone, and I feel that in any team I went, they are accepting me and encouraging me in a way, and to be frank, embracing the things that I bring onto the table. So those are the things I feel like that you as a social worker will cherish, or you love to have wherever you work. So yes, it's the same thing happened in India. The same thing is here. The only difference is a bit of cultural things that I bring on table, and the Northern Ireland teach me a lot. Yeah,
well, that's good to hear. And Rosie, Albert mentioned the fact that he kind of chose the Belfast Trust, and that David, I suspect David Wiley,
yes,
encouraged him.
Yeah.
And in the Belfast Trust, you, as with many other organisations in Northern Ireland, need more staff, and you have quite good schemes to help internationally qualified social workers come. I mean, Albert talked about his compensation scheme, compensation measures in 100 days and so on.
Yeah, no, we're delighted to have Albert with us, but the compensation measures is a great opportunity to help social workers get work here and recognise what they've already got and already know, and just help them in that last hurdle. So it's great to have that scheme with NISC and ourselves. We have a number of routes where we recruit social workers internationally. So for start with people who've moved to Northern Ireland out of choice, which we always love to see, and then they're looking for a job and working out how do I find a route into social work, and then that would be where we direct them to NISC in terms of getting onto that register, but then they're able to apply to any of our normal recruitment. But Belfast Trust at the minute recognising we need to develop our workforce and the wealth that international social workers bring to us. We've got an international recruitment drive on at present. So this is different. So we're not waiting for people to arrive here and want work. We're going out and we're recruiting internationally. So those people are being recruited to specific jobs. They still have to register with NISC. That's very, very important. It's the starting point for everything. But we're bringing them over here to work with us, to join us and work with us. So that's kind of a new scheme. And I suppose almost related to it, we also have a lot of people who are international people, should I say, that come to the UK to study social work. So almost a couple of steps back for us. So they've come maybe from Nigeria or South Africa. They've come to the UK and studied as social workers, and then they want a job. So they're coming to us having qualified and studied here. They're not internationally qualified, but they're international people, so they bring a wealth to us as well. So kind of overlapping themes with the internationally qualified staff as well.
I mean, that must be a big driver to get more people who aren't the same as us. We have a much more diverse society
Absolutely.
here now.
Yeah.
And 110 odd international social workers out of more than 6,000 is quite a small percentage, Tricia, isn't it? So, I mean, is Social Care Council and are the other trusts, are they kind of involved in that sort of push to, or pull rather, to bring people in as well?
Well, I suppose, Wendy, it's something that I think we all recognise, that wealth that Rosie's referred to, that people bring, because it is about when you have new people coming in who are from a different background, different religions, different countries, all of that means that their experience means that they can challenge us appropriately at times too about what we do, how we do it, when we do it. But equally, they can bring us all of those new perspectives as well. So it's really useful to have it. In terms of promoting social work, we like to promote social work wherever we go, in terms of it being a great career here for people and trying to get the best people here to serve our society. So that's something that we're totally behind.
And Kellie, what do you think that you have brought to the Probation Board from Australia?
Different perspectives. As you said, I see through a different lens. And being an Aboriginal woman and working in different communities, like I said before, it's a bit familiar. So I bring, experience in trauma, poverty, discrimination, but it's the perspective. It's a different viewpoint on how I see things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just through a different prism, really. Yeah,
it does. But I've been a social worker for nearly 20 years now, so I've been around the bush a little bit, so as you would say. But a lot of, forensic background work and in the prisons and things, so a lot of different skills I bring into the organisation.
And what about the organisation itself? I mean, you mentioned how they'd kind of welcomed you with open arms, and Stephen's driven you here today and so on. But what have you learned from them, perhaps about, the different ways of working that they have, or
the standards, the policies, the legislation? They really address. We really have to watch risk. Risk is really important, not just to the offender but to the public, to keep the public safe. I'm still learning. I've been there for about 15 months now, so really enjoying it. And the professional development, CPD, is unbelievable. Like, it's just constant. You're in training all the time, updated. And because my job is so complex, this is what I love about PBNI. You could be writing reports, then you're supervising, then you're in the court, and then there's so many different aspects to the job. But I'm learning so much. I really am, and it's interesting. And there's not a day where it's the same. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. That's what I always liked about my job.
Yeah, it's
too.
different and great management. It's a really, really good organisation to work for.
And Albert, I thought it was interesting that initially you were unhappy because you weren't doing what you had been doing before, which was working with children and kind of education side. And then you ended up working with children, and then you started doing something else. I mean, that's, as I've learned in these various series, that's very much social work, isn't it? That there's maybe something else, and you try that and you find that actually you really enjoy it. So tell me a bit about your work in Musgrave Park.
It is more about helping the inpatients, like whoever comes in to the hospital with their discharges, any support needed at home, might be a package of care, or if they can't go home, they can go into residentials or any care homes, wherever they can get the best care possible so that they can recover, get back as normal as they can. At times it's not possible because of the conditions, different conditions that we can see I work in neuro ward, so basically it gets deteriorating as time passes. So yes, it's very hard at times as a person to see those emotions, see those things when people express their feelings, which is totally different from reality at times. Making them understand that process, that it is what it is very hard, because when we are human, we understand that feeling. But at the same time, we have to make them understand that the reality is somewhere else. So that process is very hard at times. But yes, in the same time, when you see that there is support from my seniors and there is support from my colleagues, that other staff, for example, the physios, the OTs, the nurses, the doctors, there's a team, it's a multidisciplinary team. So we're working together with a focus so that the best possible service we can provide to any person coming to Musgrave. That's the motive that we have in Belfast Trustee.
There's been a lot of publicity, obviously, and a lot on the news about the race riots that have been here both this year and last year. And it's interesting to hear you talking about getting people to open up to you and getting them perhaps to listen to you talking about the realities of their situation. Have you had any difficulties with people bringing that sort of nasty racism that we've seen in the streets to bear in your own situation?
Yes, I did. It's very sad that I had to go through that, because I can be very open. I came into this country with certain hopes, because we all come in with an aspiration, with a hope that everything will be better for us as a person. So when I came in, it was sadly not the reception that a person can get. It's emotional at times, but throwing stones, saying things, abusive things, is not good for anyone. Just taken like that, if your brother or your sister, whoever, is going to a different place and they experience the same thing, how would you feel? Because our family is back in India. So, they were feeling very, they're anxious, they're worried, because we are far away from, where we were. We are far away, and this English is not our first language at times. Might be our expression or our language, or things might not be the same. But we have, the same emotions. We are having the same color of blood. So it's red for everyone. So there's nothing changing. The only thing is that maybe we are looking different at times in eyes of people. But we bring in certain positive, maybe culturally also we are present in something positive. But yes, I felt bad because it's not being caused by elders, it's being caused by children. So that was hurting, because I worked with children all my years. They throwing stones at me, I was very, it was something shocking. At the same time, emotionally, I was very disturbed that they are, it's being done by small children. It's it's not maybe 10, under 10, 12 maximum. That's the age of the children. And when you see that, it's very disturbing, yes.
What kind of support were you able to get? I mean, I'm sure your colleagues were very supportive.
Yes. It is my colleagues and obviously the team I work with, and I always say it out. Yeah, even I've worked in Belfast Trust for some time now. It's in a year and a half now. But the thing is that it is always a great help when you see that there is someone backing you. You feel comfortable if you ask them, my seniors about, can I go home? This is the situation. Yeah, there is a window for me to, always open, that you feel like you can go approach. That's the culture that, work culture, anyone can expect anywhere. That's the best thing that you can get in as a person working anywhere. And I feel that I got that support even of late. My friends were being they were abused during the last riot that happened. But I was safe because my manager told me to go early, because that's not safe for you. So keeping you in front, thinking about you when things are not that good. It's not a perfect place. Everywhere in the world there will be some of the other things that you would see. But it's the same with Belfast. But at times, as a person, if you see personally, it might be hurting. But it's something that you can get support here. That is making me work, come back to the place I work. That's the important and positive thing that I can say, that if you're working in Belfast Trust, that's, you get that support.
You must be pleased to hear that, Rosie.
Look, I'm delighted, but also I know...
But it's so sad, isn't it?
It's a tragic reason that you're hearing something positive about colleagues and friends and the staff and the trust, but it's tragic. But, I mean, certainly recently it's been well publicised in the press, but it is good to balance what we are hearing also from our staff. We First of all, we have a workforce support officer. I'll give her a shout out. She's my colleague Jeanette, who I am really appreciative of, and her role is to support our international recruits into social work here. We're just about to begin them coming. So because of these race riots, she was reaching out to our new international staff who joined us over the last year, and ringing them, where are you? Are you okay? Is there anything we can do? Just looking at that. And 99.9% of the time the answer was, my colleagues have been on, my team have been on, my manager sorted this. But we did have social workers who were in their houses for 5-6 days, not feeling safe, able to leave, maybe with their young children, not feeling they could send their children to school, very frightened. So, it could have been about keeping in touch, about having that open line of communication, or very practical, going bringing shopping round, all that sort of thing, and building people's confidence up. It's not something you ever would be choosing to want to do, but at the end of the day, social workers are here to help us in our society. They're here to help your relatives, if you're listening, in your time of need. Social workers are often there. So for them to experience things like this is really disappointing, but they keep going, they keep going. And the teams that they work with are so supportive. And I think it's really, they're enriched by the international staff who come and join them, but I think it's opened their eyes. You do see a total perspective, and to help to understand what that means, a colleague experiencing something like that, and recognising that the people we work with, our social workers reflect our society. As you say, it's becoming more and more diverse all the time, and the people we work with are also experiencing this, fear in your own home, not feeling safe. Those are not things anyone should have to experience,
And there's a degree of resilience required, really, Tricia, isn't there? Which is, it's an awful angle from which to look at it, I suppose, to say
Absolutely.
that. But we're horrified, but you need to be able to support people like Albert and all of those people doing the fantastic work that they are doing.
100%. And I think, it's really important to recognise that social workers are people too. We're human beings first and foremost, and we've decided to take on a career that means that we're support to everybody else in society as well. So, as Rosie said, Albert, what you've been through, it is tragic. You shouldn't have to go through that. It's unacceptable. But even the fact that you're talking about, children, for instance, being the perpetrators, where do children learn things from? So to me, this all speaks to the need for social work and the need for social workers to be really invested and in communities and supporting communities. And the more diverse, and I think we've talked about, how diverse social work representation enriches what we do. But it's more than that. It's central to what we do because of the fact that we do live in a more diverse community now. Thankfully, we should do. We should encourage and embrace that. But also, our workforce needs to be representative of that community. People need to be able to see themselves in social work and in social workers. So, people coming here from international countries, they're central to what we do. They help us be strong and robust as a social work profession.
So what are some of the common questions that you would get asked, Tricia, by internationally qualified social workers as the regulator?
Yeah, and I think Kelly touched on it earlier. Sometimes it's actually all the administrative stuff, Wendy. It's, all the documents that they're going to need when time frames, etc. So I suppose what I would do is we do have a website and we have general guidance on our website under the Internationally Qualified Social Worker section, and that will actually give people a really clear sense of all the documents that they're going to need, what we're going to ask about their qualifications and what they're going to need to provide. In 2022, I think we introduced the need for people to be able to evidence English language skills as well. So that has increased some questions in and around that as well. So we have information on that about what people need to do to provide that evidence. So there's a number of different things which we'll accept as evidence that somebody's English is of the requisite standard. And I suppose the reason we have introduced that is because it's really important that if we're serving our community, that there's a real level of comprehension and understanding from both sides.
Yeah.
You know, that social workers aren't missing anything, and equally that the person that we're working with doesn't miss what we're saying to them and how we're communicating with them either. So it's really important, but it does lead to a number of questions. So there's lots of information on our website about that and about all the documents and about the process. The process, once we've got all the documents, I suppose what we say to people is that we'll probably take between 16 and 20 weeks. And that's our aim, is to have everything done and dusted and a response to the person within 20 weeks. But that is very much dependent on all of the documentation being in, and sometimes because people just didn't know where to look for the list, or, you know, they've maybe missed something on the list. Sometimes that goes back and forward a wee bit and becomes time consuming. But they're kind of the key questions that we have. Sometimes we get questions about where to go to look for jobs, etc. We do have a short document on our website too about living working and living in Northern Ireland, which gives some information about that too. But, you know, and I think both Kelly and Albert will have engaged with our registration team, who are really good at answering questions and coming back to people. So there is always a connection there. When the person first makes their application, you know, we're very keen to let them know that we're there to answer questions.
Oh, well, that's good. And Rosie, what comes first? Kind of chicken and egg here. You know, do you look for the job first, or do you decide you're going to come and then look for the job, or how does it work?
Ultimately, you will need to be registered before you can start a job, but our processes would allow people to make an application, if you read the criteria, as long as they are registered before they take up the job. So it is kind of chicken and egg almost. But mostly people are registered before they apply to us, mostly. Or they're in the process, but mostly they're registered. And so the questions we're getting are a little bit later in the scheme of things. There may be more practical sort of questions we would get about just helping someone understand how, for example, school holidays work here. You know, we've had people who've come and have no concept that their children will be off school for months in the summer. You know, so helping them understand how their annual leave, you know, they'll need to kind of budget that out, or people will ask all sorts of, could be anything, you know, where will I find a hairdressers that can cope with my type of hair? I can't see one anywhere. Could you tell me where I can look? Where can I find a supermarket that'll sell the sort of food that reminds me of home? It could be anything. So Jeanette is really skilling herself up, and we've got quite a big pack developed to try and help our new recruits who are coming over with really practical things, as well as some of the cultural awareness things that would be really important for them.
What were the questions that you wish you had asked Kelly before you came, perhaps?
Well, I got on the International Qualified Social Work website, so I just looked all that up, as us social workers do. You know, we're straight on the ball with all that kind of stuff. So I just looked it up and followed the process. Sent an email. Was it Julia? Yeah, lovely woman. And just went by the process and started the whole university. The university was the hardest thing, because my university is huge in Australia, and it just that's what took months. It wasn't you guys, it was the university, because you can't get anything without, you've got to have all the correct paperwork, and NISC need to be able to have the right documentation to be able to contact back in Australia or whatever, you know what I mean, to verify. So
it was a kind of bit of a vicious circle in some
and
ways.
Really, but it was just pretty much got on the website, had a look, got all the paperwork together, and then sent it off and just waited. But it was quite quick. The turnaround was quite quick.
And I suppose that's a good point you've made too,
But you
about
have
the
to have the right
verifications.
paperwork,
Yeah, so we do checks.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need to make sure that we have public protection at the forefront of everything that we do. So we need to make checks that people are who they say they are. They have the qualifications they say they have. So absolutely, yes, you're right, Kelly. We'll have, followed up once all that documentation came through.
Did you have lots of questions, Albert, before you came?
Yes, I had. And to be frank, Julie has been the person who was involved with me as well. She was very nice. To be frank, I always say to anyone who I meet, and I always say that name to anyone, if someone asks me who to talk to in NISC, I always say go and talk to Julie Daines, and she is one of the person I'll never forget in my life, because at those times, I told you I was very down of certain situations. I was working and family, because we moved in, that very year, so it was like getting used to the system things, working, and then my wife also is working, so it's very hard to balance things at the beginning. So at the same time, when you are struggling with your the passion that you have, you're struggling with that aspect, it's very hard. So I had a lot of questions about it's not because of NIST, it's about the same thing about my university. They were not getting back with the answers and all. So I asked Julie, and she is so nice that she made all those arrangements for me. I think she made out everything for me, to be frank. I did nothing in that aspect, because I feel like I'm blessed, in that aspect, that NISC was there to support me in that process.
So I was going to ask if there was one piece of advice you'd like to give to someone who's thinking of applying to be an internationally qualified social worker in Northern Ireland. I'm guessing you would say, make sure you speak to Julie.
Yes, very true. The only thing that I would always make out is that there is, I always learned in this thing I learned from Belfast, there's no silly questions. There's no silly questions. It is silly for you, but it is important for anyone who is answering that. So it's this is the thing. I was a person who is hesitant to ask that question, to say that. But after coming here, this is the thing I learned. I asked, I try to question things, and I'm still I need to improve a bit, but I'm still improving on that aspect. But yes, you just asking questions, and there are people who will answer you back in NISC. Maybe at times, because of at certain point of time, they might take longer because of the number of application into NISC is it's very high. So it might take a bit, but they will come back to you, and you just have to, be a bit patient, just like they are with us. So, yeah.
Very good. What would you say, Rosie, one piece of advice you'd give if someone was thinking to come here?
I probably struggle to keep it to one, Wendy, as we all do here. I suppose believe in yourself. At the very core of it, you're a social worker, you're qualified, your knowledge, your skills, your values will be as important to us here. And just keep that belief while you're in the process, because it can be a journey, and then applying for and finding a job can be a journey. But hold on to your belief in yourself as a person, yourself as a social worker. And I suppose the other end of the scale in terms of practical advice might be, although not relevant today, bring an umbrella and a warm coat. Prepare for our Northern Ireland environment, But yeah, definitely believe in yourself. And as Albert says, there may be bumps on the road. There may be things you don't know about. Ask all the questions. Not only will the person be informed, but we will recognise that maybe we've gaps in what we do or information we have, and we'll improve and learn from those people asking questions. So we welcome curiosity as core to being a social worker.
Isn't it just? Kellie, what about you?
I would say don't underestimate the value that you hold and the experience you already have. Because, and another, I would also say, start the registration process early. Read the guidance carefully, gather all your documentation and ask questions when required. Most importantly, be open to learning. You'll bring valuable experience with you, but you'll also learn a great deal from the colleagues and the communities in Northern Ireland.
Oh, that's kind of in a nutshell. Tricia, what about you? A final word?
Yeah, I think everybody's covered the things that I might have said, and I do love the idea that people should believe in themselves and recognise their value, and that we want to welcome social workers here, so I think that's great. And as Kellie says, if you read the guidance, hopefully, and again, the guidance mightn't be perfect, and if there's anything on it that's missing, contact us, and we learn as well as we go. We're all learning, so yeah. So definitely, put the application in.
Well, it's great to have had you all here today. Thank you so much to Tricia, Rosie, Albert and Kellie. Just a reminder that if you are an internationally qualified social worker and you want to practice in Northern Ireland, or you know someone who is, there is lots of information on the Social Care Council website. it's a very long link actually, but if you just go to the Social Care Council website and look for internationally qualified social workers, you'll find it there. Thank you all for being here today. You've been listening to Care to Chat, a podcast from the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. It's great to have had you with us. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of our podcasts, do subscribe. You can pick them up on the Social Care Council website. Make sure you tell all your friends and colleagues. And thanks for listening.